Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first episode of 2023 of the Founder Hour podcast.
And this podcast is brought to you by Outer. Outer makes the world's most beautiful, comfortable, innovative, and high-quality outdoor furniture, all from sustainable materials, and is the only outdoor furniture with a patented built-in cover to make protecting it effortless. From teak chairs to fire pit tables, everything Outer makes has the look and feel of what you'd expect at a five-star resort for less than you'd pay at a big box store for something that won't last.
Pat, and you know how much I love five-star resorts.
Oh yeah, I do.
And as you know, Pat and I spend a lot of time outdoors, and we love hanging out on our outer couches. We're certain you'll love it too. For a limited time, get 10% off and free shipping at liveouter.com. This is Outer's best offer anywhere.
Anywhere.
Only available to the Founder Hour listeners. Get 10% off and free shipping at live, O-U-T-E-R. Let me say that again for all you alphabet geeks. Live, OUTER.com/the Founder Hour. That's liveouter.com/the Founder Hour. Terms and conditions apply.
Let's get into the episode.
Our guest today is Rich Barton. Rich is the founder and CEO of Zillow Group, where he leads the company's work to transform how people buy, sell, rent, and finance homes. Zillow is a real estate marketplace company that was founded in 2006 and has literally become a household name. Prior to Zillow, Rich also founded the online travel company and Microsoft spinoff Expedia and job search engine and career community Glassdoor. Barton was also a venture partner at Benchmark and is on the board of directors of Netflix, Nextdoor, Artsy, and more. Let's dive into his story. Well, Rich, thanks for being here. I know you're here in LA for a little bit, and you're from Seattle.
I live in Seattle. Yeah.
How long?
Although I live in the cloud now, it seems.
Yeah, I know. Everybody keeps telling us Zillow's in the clouds.
We're in the cloud HQ. But yeah, I move around a lot. But Seattle is my home base.
Nice.
Yeah. I saw you were born in Connecticut, though, right?
No, I was born. Oh. Boy, I've moved.
So Wikipedia was wrong.
21 times. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my whole family's from Michigan.
Michigan.
Yeah. But I was born outside of Chicago.
Yeah.
I lived in Detroit in two different places. I went to high school in Connecticut, but I went to junior high school in Houston, Texas. So anyway, my dad was the guy in the suit with the briefcase who got transferred. These were in the days when professional dads would get transferred and they'd uproot their families. You know, I'm sure my mom was super thrilled with that. Pack up your family and move, because that's progress up the corporate ladder. Anyway, so I moved around quite a bit, but I consider myself, my whole family lives in Michigan.
Yeah. I know there's a lot. We're both Armenian. I know there's a lot of Armenians in Detroit. Did you know any?
I moved away when I was 7.
But
because
of the Armenians. You just
want
to
move away.
Not
because of the Armenians. No. But yeah, you didn't find this in Wikipedia either. But fun fact, my first cousin is Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan.
Nice.
Yeah. So I'm sure she's familiar with the Armenian community.
I'm sure she is, yeah. Well, a lot of Armenians, when they came from, I think it must have been mostly Lebanon and Syria, they went to Detroit. I mean, it was either New York or Detroit. It was mostly East Coast. Nobody really came here.
Yeah.
So, and then a lot of Lebanese there, so you got a lot of the...
And what was the trade?
You know, I don't know. They probably were like in some sort of manufacturing, or, you know, whether it was like food-based manufacturing or like vehicles. Like a lot of them are engineers and like very science, math-minded, I would say.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of Armenians out there. One of the largest organizations, AGBU, I think, came out of there. The guy built the like sink faucets, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Can't remember his name.
Craftspeople.
Manukian. So
yeah.
Anyways,
my great granddad was a German butcher.
Okay.
And moved to Detroit.
Wow.
Like immigrated. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, so you've moved around a lot.
Yeah, it set me up well for my future career at Zillow, but we'll get to that.
Yeah. So you said 21 times. I mean, as a kid and even as you were growing up, how did that impact your social life, your mental health? I mean, at the time, you know, mental health wasn't talked about a lot, but, you know, thinking back or looking back, I'm sure it made some sort of impact.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. I didn't know anything different, and it worked out just fine. My guess is it made me very adaptable and resilient and made me be able to listen to people and to listen to social vibes, better than most, maybe. It's probably built those muscles for me. Certainly taught me how to, make friends quickly. I thought it was great. Honestly, I didn't know anything different. I have all these friends from all over now. I think it's doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah.
Clearly, but for me, it absolutely worked. Now I have my own family and I have 3 grown kids, and they did not move around. And I think if they were here, they would say, "Thank goodness we didn't move around." I mean, I would have to leave my friends and the school and
it's
all
like
that.
when you grow up with the same people from a young age, you have this like sense of community, and it's like really hard to leave, especially once you get older. But there's something special about someone like yourself who like has been in so many different types of communities. And so like, did you ever feel like you didn't sort of identify with like a certain type of group or people, or did you lack any community at all, or did you feel like you kind of just fit in right away as soon as you kind of came to a new one?
I think there are people of a type known as bridgers, okay? And it's not the majority case people, but it's the people that tend to be the ones that are chosen for diplomacy. They're the ones that reach out across groups and bring people together. And it's a really important role in society, the bridger. For dispute settlement and for cooperation. And as I think back, on my different groups of friends in different places and the kinds of things they did, you couldn't pigeonhole me as just a nerd, though I was a nerd, or just a jock, though I was a jock, or student government, yearbook, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I was involved in all those things. I played jazz trumpet as a kid. I didn't fit a typical profile, and I found myself probably being of the bridger type.
Where do you think that came from? I mean, I can't imagine that that's something people are necessarily born with. I mean, it's probably more so a result and product of your environment. Was anybody in your family that way, or did you have any examples growing up of folks that kind of did it all?
Well, I mean, I just said that my cousin is the governor of Michigan, so she must be a bridger too. Yeah, there must have been some kind of ethic in my family around that, and maybe some of that was inborn as well. But I do think it's cultivatable, and I do think it's generally a positive for society if more of us could cultivate reaching out across the whatever divide and getting to know the other in a way that you could help communicate.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been curious about other people and other cultures and other places. I do think curiosity is a terrific trait for people to cultivate as well, and it's cultivatable.
Mm-hmm. So having all these interests, did you feel like you kind of knew what you wanted to do from a young age, or not really? Like for your career?
No, not really. I mean, I knew I did have dreams of being an entrepreneur. I knew that. I kind of knew that pretty early. I was pretty independent. I was a little bit resistant to authority and being told what to do.
Okay.
Not in any kind of antisocial way, but in a little tiny,
Don't tell me what to do.
Good boy, rebellious way, right?
But why did you think entrepreneurship? Like, how did you see folks that were entrepreneurs that you looked up to, or wanted to be like?
My community was not full of entrepreneurs. It was more full of professionals and business people.
Right.
Big company business people. So it was not full of entrepreneurs. I don't know. I think I got a taste of it for early on with my own summer jobs. I didn't really like working as a busboy for somebody else. I really liked kind of running my own business and having my own thing, and I started to do that pretty young.
What was that?
I did a lot of stuff like a lot of kids do. Maybe they don't anymore, like cut lawns and stuff like that. But then when I turned 16, I became the ice cream man. I can't believe they let me do this, but I drove around the ice cream truck.
Oh, you had a truck?
New Canaan and Darien,
At 16.
Connecticut.
That's like when you first get your license, right?
I can't believe they did this, Blue Sky Bar. Anyway, I was the ice cream man for one summer. That taught me a whole lot about being an entrepreneur and what I learned a ton about a physical business versus a digital business at that point. But anyway, that was a really formative experience for me, and I enjoyed it. I then started a painting company. I painted houses with a group of guys, made a bunch of money for college. I always liked that. I knew that. I was pretty geeky and techie too. And I knew that really got me fired up. And that was just, I came of age right as the very first personal computers were coming.
Yeah. Did you like, how old were you when you kind of first used one?
TRS-80, a Radio Shack. For real.
Radio Shack. What's that? I'm kidding.
For real. Like that's a Radio Shack.
Didn't someone buy it recently?
Yeah, I think.
Really?
Yeah. Some guy bought the IP for it.
Guarantee it's
and he's
like
just
some
like
tech billionaire guy who's like,
I think it's a wannabe tech billionaire guy.
He's this guy that like he uses it for like.
Who is it?
He like tweets stuff from the account that like Radio Shack would never tweet out, and people are like go crazy about
so
it.
he bought Radio Shack
just to tweet it.
Yeah. Okay. I mean that was ended up being bought by a company called Tandy while I was still young. But anyway, TRS-80, I had one with my buddies. I had a Commodore 64. Then the Apple II came around. I had that one. Got my first Mac in college. Anyway, so I definitely was into the video game console and personal computer thing, even though they didn't do much at the time. I really found them fascinating. So I knew I had that in me.
Yeah.
So by the time I went to college, I knew I wanted to be an engineer.
And this was computer engineering?
Yeah, I did. I wasn't a computer engineer. I was a industrial engineer. I went to Stanford. And going to Stanford, I went to high school in Connecticut, and going to Stanford was part of my, rebellion. Go west, be a pioneer.
Yeah.
Silicon Valley wasn't really even known as that yet. But that whole vibe was happening out there. And I was drawn to that.
From all these moves, I know we went a little, this is out of chronology a little bit. Where did you feel most like you?
Where, like physically or where socially?
Any of the above.
I have so much stuff I like.
Well, why don't we table that question until the end and I'll ask it again?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, look, seriously, playing a video game with my buddies, playing a pickup basketball game with my buddies, I guess doing stuff, creating stuff and doing stuff and competing with groups of people as a team. I still love that, actually. I really, really love that. And you guys do this together.
Yeah.
It's more fun to do it together than if you did it by yourself, right? It'd be lonely.
So many parallels with like business and entrepreneurship too.
Yeah.
But so like you're in college studying industrial engineering, wanting in the back of your head perhaps wanting to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Did you like feel like you had to eventually take a job and not start a business, or were you like I'm starting a business as soon as I graduate?
Yeah, so I was a practical entrepreneur. And I'll correct the record a little bit. I didn't even get my industrial engineering degree. I got a BS in general engineering industrial economics.
Okay.
It was a self-designed engineering degree from Stanford. And I did this because Stanford let me self-design.
Which is great.
Because it's in California and it's awesome.
Yeah.
Freedom, baby.
Here we are. Yep. Do what you want. And, Northern California, do whatever you want.
For sure.
I guess down here on Hollywood Boulevard, you can do whatever you want too right now.
Yeah. We're like the new Silicon Valley here.
Oh my God, it's amazing. Anyway, but I also was super interested in studying abroad. Yep. And I loved literature and I loved art. And I wanted to go to Florence to study. And to do that, I got thrown off the hardcore accredited track and onto kind of a self-designed track. So that tells you a little bit about my outlook. I sacrificed the accredited degree, knowing I really didn't care about the accredited degree, so that I could pursue other interests, and yet still was in that milieu. But back to your question. Yeah, I knew I wanted to start a company, but I also had enough sense, or my dad gave me enough sense to know that going to start a company with the relatively empty toolbox was probably not a very good bet. That maybe I ought to put a few tools in there first before I tried to build a house. And so that's how I thought about it.
Rich, one thing that comes to mind, or a question that comes to mind when I hear your story so far is, you're interested in a lot of things. You've been to a lot of places. You've had a lot of experiences. Did you feel as though you were all over the place and you couldn't necessarily pick something to do early on? And I'm talking like this is during the college days. Because I feel like Pat and I have had this experience where we enjoy a lot of things. We're interested in a lot of things. We're interested in a lot of people and hobbies and sports and this and that. And then you just get to the point that you're like, but what do I do with all that, right? Like I enjoy so many things. I don't want to pigeonhole myself per se, but I know that I probably have to for a little bit to get to my desired place. Did you feel that way at all?
I don't remember feeling about that way explicitly. I do remember wanting to pursue a whole bunch of different things, though, and feeling that at a young age, at least, maybe to what you were saying, it wasn't going to be that big a deal if I jumped around a bit. And I actually had a really good appreciation for the kinds of people that end up running stuff being non-specialists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Being generalists. Okay. And so how do you study to be a generalist? How do you practice to be a generalist? You do a bunch of things.
Yeah.
Right. And so I didn't see that as a bug. I saw that as a feature.
Mm-hmm.
And I did jump around a lot. I did.
Were you ever anxious? I feel like generalists deal with more anxiety because it's like this unknown sometimes, right? Most of the time, where you're just like, I don't know where this is going, but I'm just gonna try it out. But like, what if I fail? And like, I mean, there's like a whole thing of like perhaps fear of failure that you have to get over. That I think the successful ones obviously do. But I'm just curious for you.
Anxious is an interesting word because there's negative anxiety. Okay, the negative anxiousness is anxiety, but there's a positive anxiousness means restlessness and ready for the future.
Right.
Can't wait for the future. Why it's slowing me down? I want to get going to the future.
Right.
I was always the latter.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the former.
Mm-hmm.
I had an abundance of I had a very high self-regard and confidence in my abilities, probably to a painful extent when I was younger. But I was always ready to go. I was ready to leave home to go to college. I was ready to leave college to go to work. I was ready to get married before others. I was ready to have kids before my wife was. I love envisioning the future a little bit down the road, and I'm anxious to get there.
Does it ever cause disappointment though? Like that positive anxiety? Because I hear you, but at times the world doesn't hear you, and so external factors outside of what you control might not want you to get there yet, right? Whether it is getting married, somebody else has got to want to marry you, right? Having kids, someone's going to have to not only agree to it, but there's some things that got to happen, like
and I think
internally
there's a sense of like
control.
Element of like perfectionism too that a lot of people have, where it's like, well, I don't know if this is going to be the right thing, and I don't want to like make a decision sooner than I, I don't know.
Yeah. So how do you deal with that?
I don't remember that being a real negative.
Yeah. I guess from a general perspective.
Yeah. Have courage is what I'd say. I talk a lot about leadership, and I use the Wizard of Oz a lot. The kind of 3 Wizard of Oz characteristics. The Scarecrow was seeking brains. The Tin Man was seeking a heart, and the Cowardly Lion was seeking courage. And they discover through that story, I'm sure everybody's seen or read or heard the Wizard of Oz, but through the story that the great and powerful wizard is just it's a ghost. There is no real wizard. There is no man behind the curtain, and that all those things are within us, and it's just about finding those things. And having those things in balance, I think, is a really important key to life. Drilling down on courage for a sec, which is my answer to your question, I would say people, I think we're wired primally to be more fearful than we should. Because historically, as a species, fear was to keep us alive because our lives were on the line. We were going to get eaten by the lion or whatever. Whereas in most places, and certainly the places I've been in modern Western society, failure is not going to result in your being eaten. Right. And so I like to embolden people to be courageous. And I think when you are courageous and you have an optimism about how things will turn out, you become adventurous and you go forth and seek. And it's okay to have, to trip up along the way and and stub your toe, and it's okay to do it's okay to have setbacks. The rewards come when you adventure.
I love that.
Yeah. So okay, so when you graduated Stanford with this general engineering degree,
Thank you.
What want to make sure
not a specific
I
engineer.
I want to be freaking canceled because I had the wrong degree on my resume. All right.
What comes next? What do you do?
So I had done a bunch of things in summer jobs leading up to graduating, mostly making money like painting houses.
Yep.
The summer before, everybody, like smart kids, ambitious kids all wanted to go into banking or consulting.
Yep.
Nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed. Coming back around again. .com bust V2, whatever. We're going through it right now. So we're back to banking.
Yeah.
Anyway, so between junior and senior year, I was a intern investment banker in New York City. Rode the train, wore a suit, ran Lotus 123 on a personal computer, and learned that I didn't want to be an investment banker, even though I did have a good time. I thought it might bring out the worst in my personality. And so right after college, for a brief period of time, I went into management consulting as a strategy consultant in Cambridge, Mass. Learned pretty quickly I learned a lot and have fun, but I learned pretty quickly that wasn't really my thing either. I got a good business education. But a good friend of mine from Stanford had been recruited by a small tech company, Microsoft, right out of engineering school at Stanford, and Nina started calling me as soon as she got to she didn't get the consulting job. She had to go to Microsoft.
Yep.
And she started calling me and she's like, Richie, this is where you belong. And
what would you compare Microsoft at the time to the company now? Like the level that it was at?
Yeah, 3,000 people. So what's a known 3,000 person company? I don't know. Pinterest.
But in terms of like stage of like growth, were they pretty like popular at the time? Like people have the PCs yet?
Oh yeah.
3,000.
But it was small.
It was like early 90s, right? Early 90s?
This is 91.
Oh, okay, so
90,
pretty deep into the.
Yeah. I mean,
but
PCs,
not like what it is now.
Right. I mean, look, PCs are everywhere now.
Yeah.
Including in this room. There weren't that many then.
Yeah.
But Microsoft was MS-DOS 5 was my first product. I was product manager.
Yep.
And so it was the 5th version of the operating system.
Is that still like the blue screen with the text, or
it was
literally that?
Depended on the CRT. The CRT you had, it depended the color, but a lot of them were black with orange and black with green. But anyway, yes, that was the command line interface to the computer.
And were they like the market leader in the space at the time, or was Apple kind of?
I think we're far enough away from a really bruising Department of Justice antitrust investigation of Microsoft that I can say yes, it was the market leader. Microsoft was the far and away market leader, had the lion's share, in fact, of the market. It was a big successful product, obviously, but it was a pretty small company. 3,000 people, growing quickly.
Yeah, relatively speaking.
It's been public a couple of years. Bill Gates was the youngest CEO ever, take a company public, and became the wealthiest young person or one of the wealthiest people ever. And I looked back one time. I remember looking back at the Fortune cover he was on after Microsoft went public in, I don't know when it was, 87, something like that. And on paper, he was worth $350 million.
Crazy.
And the whole of the business world couldn't believe how much money that was.
Now, if you're you're not even on the Forbes 10,000.
That's like a bad hour for you.
Yeah.
Crazy.
350 million. God forbid you failed.
Anyway, it was small, exciting. Really smart people working their butts off. Lots of geek macho, lots of dudes, geeky dudes.
No DEI back then. That's
developers,
for sure.
developers.
A lot of people working all the time, and then eating in place and not bathing and playing video games in between, coding, whatever. It was that kind of thing.
Yeah. Could have started a cologne brand. Just like...
It would have been.
Must have been a fun time to be like in the office in those days.
I loved it. Yeah. I loved it. But I did learn a lot. I did put a lot of tools in my toolbox. Going back to my dad's My dad's thing.
What tools? I'm curious because I think it's important for people to hear this part of the story because I think a lot of folks know and think and believe that entrepreneurship is this like, amazing thing. And I mean, Pat and I have said this multiple times. You sit down with enough founders and you learn really quickly that it's not the sexy thing it is, especially early on, and that you really do need to have resources, whether it's the skills, the money, the market needs it, right? Like there needs to be something there. It's not just like I woke up today, I want to be an entrepreneur, I'm going to start a water bottle company and be successful. Like
Right.
it takes more than just that. So if you don't mind just spending some time talking about what those tools were, so the folks that are listening can maybe think about those things when they're heading out of college or going into college or transitioning jobs.
Yeah. Or in your current jobs.
Yeah.
Like you can learn from your current jobs right now. Be they summer jobs or part-time jobs, or you're early in your career out there and you're working for a big, bigger medium-sized company. The tools I'm talking about are how to hire somebody, how to fire somebody, how to do a performance review. How should we think about whether or not to invest in a new opportunity? How should we decide what we have scarce resources that we've negotiated for? Now, how do we prioritize in order to cooperate to get something done? How do we make sure that we're not all heads down in our own little details and we miss the forest for the trees? How do we keep on the same page strategically? Do we go off-site once a quarter and go put ourselves in a completely new context and try to back up to 50,000 feet and discuss things? Basically, it's how do you manufacture something? One of my first jobs for MS-DOS, back then we had to manufacture floppy disks and put documentation like books in a box, shrink wrap the box with box art, put it in Egghead software like it was a product. Like I had to go to
now
the
it's
plant.
probably like $100,000 to buy one of those.
I wish I
because Rich owned one and it's signed.
Seriously, wish I kept one. I have a T-shirt from those days, but I did the BOM, the bill of materials. Like that was my thing, and I went to the plant. Anyway, those are all tools,
right?
Okay. But back to the ice cream truck. One of the tools I learned being the ice cream man was I had to pay for the inventory of the ice cream. I used my own money to fill the truck. I used my own money to rent the truck. I had to finance this thing. Okay. And then all my money was tied up in inventory.
Right.
And I only had 10 weeks.
Yep.
All right. I had to manage my inventory such that I was negative for the first 9 weeks. And in the 10th week, I made $1,800.
Right.
By selling out my inventory.
Well,
Okay. And I was like, wow, I think I want to be in digital businesses that don't have giant cogs and I don't have to manage inventory. And, it was a lesson I unlearned later in life to my chagrin. But almost everything I've done since that point has been digital. Yeah.
So these are like really important, just general business leadership skills. And you being someone that learned kind of on the job, versus I think I saw that you didn't get like a business degree in MBA or anything like that. What are your thoughts? I mean, not having gone through a program like that, perhaps you have friends or colleagues that did. Do you feel like these are things that you just have to learn out in the real world, or
no? I think you could easily learn about accounting, HR operations, et cetera, at school as well. And, no doubt, there's a lot of ways to learn, but you should always be learning.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm looking at your audience now. Now you guys
I think it's the willingness to learn.
Y'all should always be learning. Every experience you have is a potential learning experience. And if you're curious and you have a growth mindset, you come out of every interaction smarter.
Right.
And I mean, I was still am part-time, but a part-time venture capitalist for a long time. I heard a lot of people pitching me their big idea. And I got to the point where I knew in the first 5 minutes, if I was going to be interested in investing. And
was that based on who the person was versus the idea, or both? Or
I mean,
because at that early stage, it's usually like who the person is.
It could have been any number of things, but mostly, the person didn't have a realistic expectation of what the addressable market was, what the opportunity was, what the product market fit was. Didn't have, enough experience. But what I was going to say was, when I know in the first 5 minutes I've got a 1 hour meeting, I'm not rude. I could look at the next 55 minutes as a learning experience for me, because you know what? That person may not win with this current idea, but this person does know something that I don't know.
Yeah.
And so, what can I learn from that? And I guess, so that's broad-based advice.
So back to Microsoft.
Yeah.
How long are you there?
1991 to 99.
Wow, almost a decade.
And so Expedia, Expedia was launched within Microsoft.
That's right.
Okay, so how does that happen? And this is something I want to talk about, because it's this concept of intrapreneurship that I think is often overlooked.
Love it.
Because entrepreneurship, everyone knows you go out there, start a
Love
business,
it.
but you could be working at a big company. It could be 30 people to 3,000 people to 30,000 people. But I think sometimes, and I'm curious to hear your experience, because it really matters who the company is, right? And if they're open to that, and in terms of fostering entrepreneurs versus shutting ideas down. And so you obviously worked for, folks like Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer and folks like that perhaps were more open to it. But just what was that experience like in terms of pitching it to them, and where did the idea even come from?
Yeah, I might even generalize even more, Pat, and say, don't confine your entrepreneurship to starting a business inside of a larger organization, because the same kind of entrepreneurial thinking can and should be brought to the job you're doing right now. Guaranteed you will be a better producer, a better individual contributor, a better team leader, a better general manager if you think like an entrepreneur. Guarantee it. What you're saying is some organizations are less receptive to progress and new ideas than others, and shame on them, right? Because if you're not moving forward, you're moving backward. If you're not innovating on behalf of your customers, you're losing. But
for folks who are in that environment, maybe they're like a product manager or in marketing or in sales or something, but they have this idea for the company that they're in. How do they approach that?
Yeah.
How did you get it in front of Bill Gates?
I mean, I credit Microsoft was still pretty small and had a pretty interesting product-oriented, engineering-oriented culture. Bill Gates still did what were called program reviews of every product at the company every year. So we'd cycle through the boardroom, and a couple product managers, a couple developers would go up in front of Bill, and Steve maybe would be there, and Nathan Myhrvold maybe would be there, and present the product. What's going on with the product? What are you doing to innovate? And it was in the context of one of those reviews that I had the chance to pitch the idea for Expedia, for what became Expedia.
And what was the original idea, and why? How did you have the idea to do it within? Like, what was its relationship to Microsoft?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it quick.
Yeah.
So pre-internet, pre-web.
Yep.
All right. So most of your listeners out there probably don't even know what that world looked like. But there used to be a world where there was no graphical web. There was no Safari.
Yep.
Chrome.
It was like text on screen, right? Essentially.
It's text on screen. There was a thing that was kind of a thing. There was a pre-echo of the internet, and it was called the multimedia CD-ROM.
Oh, like you put the CD in the thing?
That's right.
Got it. And a program opens up, and that's where you see the graphics.
Yep. Encarta was Wikipedia before Wikipedia.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Encarta. It was a
Encarta.
multimedia encyclopedia, pictures, music, words, all on the CD-ROM.
Yeah.
Static.
Yeah.
That's right.
Anyway,
that's right.
This was pretty exciting. A lot of creativity being unleashed, and those who were seers, who could see a little bit further, could see there were implications for everything from this. And so I had moved. I was getting ready to leave the company and start my own thing, and I had moved from the operating systems group to the consumer division, which is working on consumer products, where the multimedia CD-ROM stuff was. Encarta was there. There were only a handful of products and not many people. And so I was given a portfolio of kind of ideas. And one of them was an Encarta for travel. So there used to be these travel guides that people would buy, photos or let's go.
What were those maps called?
Atlases?
No. No. There was
Triptychs. Triptychs. The driving ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Triptychs. We used to take driving trips. From Michigan, you drive around.
Yep.
awesome stuff. Anyway, one of the ideas was to do a multimedia CD-ROM of travel guides. And that was in my portfolio. I went to present to Bill on this. And I said, I'd come from the systems group, so I was used to seeing really big revenue numbers. And at the time, the whole of the travel book industry, if you stepped on it hard, was maybe $100 million total revenues for the whole industry. Not very big.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what, am I going to build a multimedia version and get any meaningful part of that? No, you can't even take it with you.
Yeah.
You can't even take the CD-ROM with you. So this wasn't going to be a big business. So I became very uninterested in it very quickly. However, there was this thing called CompuServe and a thing called AOL. These were online services.
Yep.
And I was a business traveler, and I had to do travel planning, and I became frustrated calling the corporate travel agent and listening to the clickety-click of the computer with the travel agent, trying to route me from Dallas to Chicago back to Seattle. And I was like, why can't I jump through the phone, turn that bloody screen towards me and do it myself? I know I can do it better. Anyway, all these things came together at this review, and I proposed. I said I showed Bill this thing called Easy Saber, which was a command line interface that travel agents working from home would use to service their customers, and it was connected to CompuServe or AOL. It was a command line thing, and it was really ugly, and it was book your own flights. And I was like, we could do a graphical version of this. We could rewrite the airline systems, which were all running on mainframes, and do it on Windows NT. And this is going to be it's going to be the biggest travel company in the world. And it's not a Microsoft business. It's a travel business. Spin it out. We'll do it outside of Microsoft.
Yeah.
Microsoft can fund it.
Right.
And what does he say?
He loved the idea. He's like, but you're crazy about the spin out thing. He's like, who are you going to hire? How are you going to do it? What do you know about building a business? And I said, okay, you're right. And so we built a little team inside Microsoft. But he said, look, if it does make sense, if it needs to be separate from Microsoft because it's running into conflicts, we'll keep an open mind.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and that mind was open, and that's how we ended up building Expedia at Microsoft. Mm-hmm. And then we got to a point where we needed $100 million to spend on marketing. And Steve Ballmer, my boss, didn't want to give me that. He said, we don't do that here. Sorry. And I said, well, it's 1999.
Yeah. Okay, Microsoft Ventures wasn't a thing back
then. No, not a thing. And 1999 was like go.com, pets.com, 1999. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I said, we can do that. We can get $100 million from public investors. Why don't we spin this off? It'll be an HR experience.
Because it was started out of Microsoft, you thought there's something there where if we took it public, like the public markets would.
Foo.com could go public and get $100 million.
You're just saying any .com.
Blob, anything.com.
Yeah.
Because everything.
But at this point, it was like the web was a thing, right? And like you could actually, like Expedia.com was a thing, right? Yeah.
Expedia.com was a thing.
Yeah.
Yep. Not a big thing. We had 145 people on the team. Not a big thing, but a thing for sure.
Yeah.
The web was happening. Like it was clear the web
was happening. And this was 100% of your focus.
100% of my focus. I was running this team. And so Bill, to his credit, like these guys were my venture capitalists. They were my entrepreneurial venture capitalists. And the CFO of Microsoft's a great guy named Greg Maffei, who is now the CEO of all the Liberty companies, which own Liberty Media, Formula One, Ticketmaster, all these things. Okay. Anyway, he's still on my board.
Harvard guy, right?
At Zillow. Yep. Awesome guy. Good close friend. He was a young CFO at Microsoft, and I went to him and I gave him. I pitched him on the idea. He was pretty psyched about it. He was interested in the .com thing that was happening outside of Microsoft too. People were making fortunes. Okay, really interesting stuff was happening. And so we set it up. He helped me set it up as a carve out of the company. We took it public in November of 1999. I was 32 years old.
And then what happens with the crash? Like, obviously it survived, but like, what was that experience?
It was a real business. Like Expedia was unlike pets.com.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or most
and by the way, there were 150 that you don't even remember.
Like you figured out like revenue streams, like everything's good.
Buying airline tickets and reserving hotel rooms on the web is like, of course.
Yeah. Like it's not a fad that's going.
It's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere.
Right. And it's, it's effectively infinite TAM. Like it's total addressable market. It's like so big.
Yeah.
You don't need much share to get big.
And you're just like a marketplace for it.
We were electronic travel agent.
Yeah.
And we had, first hundreds of thousands, then millions, then tens of millions of users and customers, and they buy airline tickets. And so it was working. So when the crash happened in, whatever.
Late 99, early 2000? Oh, was it? Yeah.
God, I should know this. Yeah. Early 2000?
Yeah.
Did it blow up?
I think so.
February, March of 2000? How is it that I'm repressing that? I'm confusing it with...
It's 22 years ago.
Y2K.
With the...
2008.
With the Twin Towers.
Oh, 2000.
That's 2011.
That's
2001.
2001. That was pretty important to
Right.
our business too.
Yeah.
But in the bust, like our stock had run way up and then crashed down with everybody else. But we made money.
Yeah.
Like it didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I should have tried to take the company private, like myself at that point, but I wasn't smart and I wasn't experienced enough at the time. But it was a really nice feeling to have a real business and a real balance sheet and a real product and real customers when everybody else was getting flushed out to sea.
Yeah.
Warren Buffett likes to say, you don't find out who's swimming naked until the tide goes out. And we were one of those businesses. I feel that same way now about Zillow. We'll get to that at some point, but whatever. The tide's going out right now, and Zillow has $3 billion of cash, and we make money.
Yeah.
And we were not at that scale at Expedia at that time, but we made money.
Mm-hmm.
So we were going to make it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
we made, we gained share.
how long did you run Expedia?
So we started Expedia in 94. We started working on it. We shipped the first product in 96, went public in 99. And then in 2002, Barry Diller bought it, took it private.
Mm-hmm.
IAC, Interactive Corp, it was known at the time. It was known as
Barry
USA
Diller, he's like a media guy, right?
He's a media guy. And he started an interactive company.
Yeah. I guess Expedia, media, something
No,
there.
he made the move from traditional media to interactive media early.
Yeah.
He's a visionary guy.
Yeah.
And started buying companies. And he bought Expedia.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when I moved out.
Were you already in a position at that point where you had reached a level of financial success or not yet?
Yeah.
Like, did you feel like you had did you have motivation to obviously you did, but where did that come from? Why did you feel like you had to keep going and start another company? Like, why not just cruise?
Well, I took a year off. I had 3 little
that
kids.
counts.
I just had twins, my second and third kids. My wife was a OBGYN, and it took me quitting before she would believe me that I was going to quit. So I had to wait for her for 6 months to wind down all the babies, and her patients had to have the babies. And then she took a sabbatical, and we moved to Italy for a year.
Wow.
Oh, sweet.
Back
Did
there
you book
for
it
your
through
art.
Did you book it through Expedia? Or?
We punched out, of course. Yeah, of course. No, we kind of punched out. I had other things I was doing at the time. I'd been on the board of Netflix since it was private.
So
I had a few other boards. I was on the board of Ticketmaster.
Mm-hmm.
I was on the board of Expedia.
You were doing the board thing for a little while.
I still do. But
were you bored of being on boards at some point?
No, I loved it. I thought it was super fun. It was a great way to.
I feel like you learn a lot.
You learn a ton.
Yeah, you see so many.
Yeah.
So it was great. So I had work things I was doing.
So that was like the Mark Randolph era.
Yeah.
Or was he already done?
Mark left pretty early.
Yeah.
I came in about 6 months before Netflix went public, so I can't really tell you the year. Maybe it was 2001.
Yeah.
And Mark had recently left.
Yeah.
So anyway, I had things I was doing, but we went to Italy for a year. We spoke Italian. We drank wine. We went to art class.
Did you get bored of that?
I had a life art. I have a life art drawing. My wife still hangs it up.
Nice.
I mean, isn't 1 year of travel just exhausting on its own? Especially with 3 young kids.
We loved it. We were young. Yeah, we were young, like you guys. We had a lot of energy. No, we loved it. We loved learning new things. I took up road biking. I was looking for my inner artist, my inner poet, my inner writer, my inner whatever teacher. I did some teaching. But hey, I didn't find it. I didn't find my new thing.
Yeah.
And I found myself fantasizing about the next one.
Starting another company.
Yeah.
How old were you?
35. 34.
Did you ever think that you'd reach a level of success that early on? And I mean, if it's an arrogant response, you're more than welcome to give it. I'd prefer it.
I mean, look, I was always a big dreamer, and I had a lot of self-confidence. Probably not. I'd reached a level of success financially that I didn't even know existed, really.
Yeah.
The way I was raised. I didn't even know it existed. I'd never seen it.
Did you care?
I cared to the extent that of what it enabled me and my family to do, and the freedom it gave us, and the security it gave us, and overall I'm a pretty grateful guy, and I'm appreciative, and I definitely appreciated that the removal of having to worry about a lot of stuff that people have to worry about every day, and that's the source of a lot of relationship strife and what have you. Just didn't have to worry about. Now, truthfully, people who do well young will oftentimes end up losing it.
Yeah.
Okay, and that wasn't going to happen with me, and I guess I would credit that to a pretty rigorous and disciplined financial literacy that my dad put me, education that my dad put me through, which is something that's kind of sorely lacking in our education system, quite honestly.
Yeah.
It's kind of just basic, the fundamentals of, financial literacy and what assets are, what return is, what debt is, what credit cards are, what paying bills are, what a mortgage is, basically how to build and retain wealth.
Or just how to invest. I mean, you don't really learn that in grade school. You don't.
You have to have a parent that gets you into it. They don't teach it, which is crazy. And it's one of the reasons the whole crypto thing got so out of control, as all these manias do, is that there was just a lack of understanding of the lack of
risk,
anything foundational to support this giant castle, right? Yeah. Whereas stocks, just as fun.
Yeah.
But, mostly there's a foundation.
Right.
But I really credit my dad and my granddad before him for, I can remember they subscribed to Value Line. You guys don't even know what Value Line is, but it was a monthly newsletter that was published by a company that I still think is around, Value Line, that basically valued companies, and explained their logic.
Yeah.
It came out, and it's like Morningstar maybe.
Right.
I don't know if you know.
And you would try to see if it's trading at what they're saying.
Why?
Yeah. And,
what's a PE ratio?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
And I was interested in that stuff, and I'd made a little money because I was a youthful entrepreneur and wanted to invest. My dad encouraged me to invest, and he helped me pick stocks.
Mm-hmm.
And picking stocks, you learn about companies.
Yeah.
And when you learn about companies, you care about companies. You understand how companies are fundamental to society as well, instead of what we have today, where people keep getting further and further away from companies. And the further they get away from companies that are companies fund society, right? The further Main Street gets from Wall Street, the more division and tension we have, honestly.
Right.
So anyway, I do see financial literacy as an important element to civil society.
So you come back from this sabbatical in Italy, you're plenty of wine in the system, you're, beautiful Italian sun, you're chilling, stress-free, haven't figured out your inner artist. So you're like, okay, time to start another company. What happens? What's the next step?
So, I think the amazing thing with working at Microsoft and having moved around a lot as a kid and having been a bridger and somebody who enjoyed people and enjoyed my network, the group of people that I have had with me and around me along the way, my teammates, that doesn't end. It just kind of it keeps continuing to this day. And there is a lesson out there for those of you who are listening, build real networks. Don't build light networks. Digital networks are not real networks. Build real networks and realize that the people you're working with and that you're going to school with and the people around you, could very likely be the people you work with down the road on something else.
Were you like, how intentional were you about who you surrounded yourself with? And like, what kind of qualities would you look for? Or do you think you just attracted certain types of people?
Maybe. We were trying to do something huge always. We were trying to become the largest seller of travel in the world when we were building Expedia. At Microsoft, we were really on this digital messianic mission. I mean, it was really quite exciting. It's hard to imagine what Microsoft was like at that time. There just weren't that many tech companies.
Yeah.
Right. So all of the excitement and energy that is spread across 100 companies right now was concentrated into 2 or 3 back then. So it was really quite a stimulating environment. And so coming back from a sabbatical, it was very easy to, the brainstorming on what to do next had already started.
Mm. And who were there like a group of people?
Yeah. Yeah. And it was actually a group of people that I'd done Expedia with and that I'd been at Microsoft with. And multiple companies spun out of that. Not just Zillow came out of that with my co-founder there, Lloyd Frank, and I had actually gone to Stanford together. We at Microsoft together. We did Expedia. He was one of them. But a couple of years later, I co-founded Glassdoor with a guy named Bob Homan, who was one of the first engineers we hired onto the Expedia team.
Right.
And he actually went to Stanford too, just a little younger than I. He was a computer science.
So you're like kind of like, let me get some folks together and like in like a think tank fashion and just like bounce around ideas and see what's what, and then who wants to handle what, and that's kind of, well, I don't know if you were self-funding it, if you were having to like go out and raise money, but was that kind of what it was?
The Expedia Mafia. Is there a term for you guys?
Diaspora, I prefer diaspora to mafia.
Slightly more positive connotation.
I have no idea if there's an Armenian mafia, so I won't make any jokes.
I think there is. But
I'm sure there is. There's always a mafia.
Yeah, there's always a mafia.
Mafia is a little bit negative and implies badness. Diaspora.
Expedia
we did scatter and did all kinds of really cool things, and I was also toying with becoming a full-time venture capitalist as well and moving down to Silicon Valley.
Sand Hill Road.
Yep. I looked at doing that. I was a venture partner at Benchmark for 16 years. And that was kind of my part-time solution to being a general partner. And it was fun. I really loved doing that. But no, it is kind of getting together at a whiteboard, maybe with a beer, and kicking stuff around and funding stuff ourselves. Lloyd and I shared an office for a while we sublet from his dad, who had a stock brokerage in Seattle, and we just started playing around with ideas. Literally, one of the first ideas we had was what would have been Dropbox.
Wait, so you're like at the board and you're just like, okay, go throw out ideas. What do you have in your head?
What big things are going on?
Yeah,
and what problems all of the stuff I've been involved with were products that are born of frustration, born of opportunity, observed opportunity in the deficiencies and defects in the world.
So you were of the mind state at the time that I want to start another company. I don't know what yet, but we're just going to bounce around ideas and see what comes. So the initial thought process was, I just want to start another company, but I don't know what yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's not like you saw like this really frustrating gap or pain point or something within like the real estate market where you're like, oh, someone needs to build this. It was more like, I want to start a company, and then the idea came to you.
Well, we were in a situation where we were brainstorming ideas, and our the first idea that I remember in this particular incubator phase was a Dropbox-like thing.
Yeah.
And so we were researching. Lloyd was off calling like Dell, what can I get servers for, and what's it going to cost to store these things, and trying to build a business plan about cloud storage of stuff. Obvious trend.
Mm-hmm.
We all needed that. We definitely needed it. And we probably spent 3 weeks on that and decided it wasn't a good idea, or at least not for us, because it was going to be a race to the bottom, and that Microsoft and Google and Apple would probably give it all away for free eventually, and it's sort of what's happened. But we literally were shopping for houses at the time because we were both, families growing, and I was moving back from Italy, and that we were doing that on the side, and that's when we, had the pain.
What was out there at the time?
Not much on the web.
No.
Really?
No.
2005? 4 or 5?
It's 2005. Not much. Brokerages had websites where they didn't show addresses.
Yeah.
They didn't show prices. Maybe they showed a picture or two. How can you sell a house without putting an address or a price?
So at the time, it felt like a pretty archaic
Couldn't believe it.
space. Yeah.
Couldn't believe how opaque.
Yeah.
This is 10 years into the web.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we still have an
I
opaque.
would think that would be there
we
before
still have
books,
an opaque vertical.
books would, right? Like on the web.
It was, in fact, I wrote
More
a
books than
plan.
homes.
I wrote a plan even back at Microsoft when we started Expedia. Lloyd and I were part of a team at Microsoft that was thinking about how the web was going to change industries.
Mm-hmm.
And we ticked through all of these kind of vertical, let's call them newspaper classified ad categories. And realized that all these newspaper classified categories were going to get busted up and disrupted by transparency.
Yeah.
Digital marketplaces. And we wrote a plan for an electronic real estate marketplace back then.
You know, it's interesting. There's this like phenomenon. I don't know what it's called, and I would like to know. Maybe we can coin a term today, or there's a word for it. I don't know. But like, whenever you look back into like these very novel, innovative companies or ideas that come about, it's usually a function of like this like step-by-step thing that needs to happen. Like it's this like convergence of like these powers that eventually lead to that. And all of a sudden you see like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 competitors come out at the same time-ish. Yeah. And they're not necessarily copying each other because they've probably been working on this idea for like years before, at least months before. Yeah. I don't know how that happens, but was this something like that?
I think so.
It was like something needed to happen. Yeah. The internet needed to be able to fully, I don't know, have the bandwidth for this. I don't know what it was, but like, what was it?
These opaque marketplaces can take a while. It can take a while to turn on the lights. Okay. And the dynamics of how long the lights can be off have a lot to do with historical industry structures, regulation, licensing, whatever, how big it is, how local it is, how fragmented it is. And real estate's just one of those, real estate and mortgages is one of those things that's just pretty local, pretty fragmented, pretty complex, lots of local interests and lots at stake for consumers, right? And so it was one of those industries that was particularly resistant and strong in the face of the coming of the digital revolution. And so it just took a while. It's still taking a while.
Yeah. What was the hardest part about getting it up and running? Like red tape? Was it inventory? Like, I mean, getting
we didn't. I mean, when we launched Zillow 1.0, Zillow.com 1.0 in 2006, we didn't even have listings.
Yeah,
we didn't have for sale listings. All we had gone and licensed a database of most of the homes in the country. And we tried to collect as much historical transaction data as we could in order to come up with a Zestimate.
Yep.
And there are maybe 100 million homes in the country. We had maybe 32 million of them with a Zestimate on it, and that's all we had. The hardest thing was just assembling the team, building the product, keeping it quiet. We knew we had a tiger by the tail. And so it was a race. Once we thought of the Zestimates, once we discovered the Zestimate in a difficult process of brainstorming, we knew we were onto something big, and we went as fast as we could.
How did you know though? Without having put it out there to see like people using it, without having any listings, how did you know something that was going to work? You just had like this really strong inclination?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you probably have this. When something's going to work, when something's going well, it's hard to describe the feeling. But most people have a pretty strong intuition.
But like you could also have a strong, I don't want to throw him under the bus, but like Jeffrey Katzenberg with Quibi had a very strong inclination that it was going to work. Otherwise he wouldn't have invested, billions of dollars into it. But like sometimes it just doesn't, right? And like, how do you gauge that? It's tough.
I mean, not everybody's able to Jeffrey's a genius in telling what's going to work in a different context. Right. and you can't argue with that guy's track record.
Right.
But there was nobody that, I would consider a peer in the venture world that heard more than 3 sentences of that idea and didn't already know it was going to fail.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, including you guys probably.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you're just going to believe it.
Sure.
Right. But you're like, oh, well, that doesn't make any sense.
No,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Don't
I don't think it's ever going to make sense.
Don't invest too much in that. Like, make sure you got product market fit.
Yeah, but I guess people knowing the estimate of their
But
home's value.
bringing real estate
I was
online.
like,
yeah,
oh
that's
my God,
cool.
who's not
Yeah.
going to want to see that?
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
It has all kinds of kind of porn appeal as well
Yeah.
as practicality appeal.
Right.
But
Right.
sometimes they say, like, when you tell people an idea and everyone says it's a great idea, you should be like a little wary about like if it's actually a good idea or not. Do you believe that or not really? Like, you think good ideas make sense from the get-go and people really understand it?
No, I think cases vary.
Yeah.
I think most entrepreneurial experiences, the entrepreneurs are met with a chorus of, that's not going to work from
Yep.
the day-to-day people around
Yeah.
them, from their parents
Yeah.
who are conflicted, okay, from their brothers who are conflicted,
Mm-hmm.
from their classmates who are conflicted. Anyway, you don't get a ton of entrepreneurs have to punch through a lot of headwinds.
Yeah.
I know. It is definitely hard. But when you have a product or a feature, and you're like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
Rich, obviously Zillow's been around now for 16, 17 years. It's a household name. I can't imagine any like 25 plus year old who doesn't have, the app on their phone. Like, even if you're not in the market to buy stuff, you'll have some sort of interest in what's going on around you. Have you been there the entire time? Did you leave, come back? What's your experience been like?
Yeah, I have been there the entire time in some role. I reluctantly agreed to be CEO initially. I was ready to we haven't chatted about Glassdoor, but I started Glassdoor as well and was the chairman there, and I was the venture capitalist. I had my hands in a lot of things and was very interested.
Oh, so you're building both kind of simultaneously?
At the same time, at the same time. And so I very much enjoyed doing, not as extreme as, say, Kevin Ryan, who was a friend of mine who you guys had on.
Yep.
I listened to him. He
was very next level. Yeah.
He was very deliberate and mechanized.
Oh, big time.
He is in his serialization and incubation of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
I wasn't that way. I was more of a
Jack Dorsey type, maybe.
Not that bad. Not that woo woo. I loved building stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was a reluctant startup CEO for Zillow, but ended up the first 6 years of it, I was officially CEO, though I did do a whole bunch of other things, and I had a great team of people, including Spencer, who I know was on your show, who was doing a lot of the operations stuff, which was great. And then we were getting ready to go public, and I didn't want to have to be the public company CEO and explain all of the other stuff I did and why, and go through the headache, quite honestly. I'd done that, and Spencer was definitely ready. And so we promoted Spencer to be the Go Public CEO, and I didn't leave. I became executive chairman. My office didn't move. And so I moved upstairs for 6 or 7 years, and then Spencer was ready to do something else, and we're at an interesting phase of the company where we're moving to going from kind of just helping people dream and shop for homes and apartments to actually transacting and making the transaction easier. And it was a big new play that could require more of a startup oriented person. So I came back to do that. And that's where I am now. Yeah.
So I know that the last few years, you guys launch programs all the time. I used to work in residential real estate at one point, and obviously, you can't run a residential real estate company without Zillow. It is your marketing. Frankly, I don't care what ads you run and what other platforms you're on. If you're not on Zillow and maybe even your competitor Redfin, there's probably not a high chance you're selling that house. Maybe, especially in this current market that we're in.
Right.
You guys had launched Zillow. Was it called Zillow Offers, or where you guys started buying the homes. Where did that idea come from? And obviously, I know what has happened since then. But how did that idea, as a learning opportunity from a leader, what was take us through that project, that phase, and what
this
you
is
guys learned?
what Posh is talking about is what's called iBuying.
iBuying, that's
which was kind of a fancy new term for a pretty ancient practice of making cash offers on people's houses.
Yeah.
Okay. We buy uglyhouses.com on billboards has been around for a long time.
Yeah. I've seen that.
Not the best reputation of industries from a kind of predation perspective and what have you, but it wasn't also professionalized. And so a company called Open Door, Eric Wu, they basically started that company and funded it to go after professionalizing and mechanizing that.
Yep.
And it was interesting, and it started growing and gaining traction and clearly had good customer adoption. It's a pretty, when you offer somebody a bag of cash for their house, it's a pretty good product. And so we watched it for a while and, decided that if that got big enough, it could end up taking over the whole of the market. The big question was, can it be done in a way that is not too risky? And so,
meaning like financially risky.
Yeah, because you have to buy the houses, rehab them, hold them for a while, and sell them.
Yeah, your money's stuck there.
Your money's stuck there in a non-static market.
Right.
In a free money, low interest rate, prices don't move that much, only move one direction kind of market. The business plan could make sense for us, and so we started playing around with it and started growing it, and then COVID happened.
Right.
Okay, and it didn't take too long before we realized that a lot of the basic risk assumptions we were making about what prices can do plausibly were wrong. And therefore we had to recalculate the spreadsheet. And if you've been in real estate, I'm sure you've done a little hustling and flipping on your yourself. And, you got to have a big buffer if you're going to do that, you got to have a really big buffer and cheap money. And so we made a controversial decision to exit that business in a pretty sudden way.
Right. And that's what I was more curious about was really the decision making as a CEO, leader, founder. What went through your head? Because that's really not that I don't care about the actual project, but from a mindset perspective, how do you make a decision like that?
This is an interesting topic because it could be applied to a lot of things, including starting a company and having to shut it down when something's not working.
Yep.
And it's like sometimes it's clear, like it's not working. Let's stop the bleeding. Let's pay back our investors if we can, whatever. And sometimes that you just don't know, and how
maybe
do you
Sam
assess
Bankman
that?
Fried should be listening to this part.
That's a different story, but how would
He probably is.
He probably is
going to come on.
Yeah, we should do some like partnership with like the jail system, like nationally, to like play our podcast. Talk about like a good opportunity. I don't think anybody's tapped into that.
Yeah, it takes courage to take big swings, to get into things, and to start companies, to start your entrepreneur thing inside of a company. You're taking a career risk when you're doing that. It takes a lot of courage to get into things. It takes a lot of courage to get out of them. It takes a lot of courage to stop them. And it is really important when you're building your business, whether you're inside a company or on your own, it's really important that you're able to pretty quickly cease and desist doing the things that are not working.
Yep.
It's one of the hardest leadership challenges, I would say, and should be cultivated, and celebrated. Okay, and celebrated. Bezos said something pretty awesome. They had a pretty spectacular failure with the Kindle Fire phone,
right? And most recently, Alexa, right?
Alexa, I think Alexa's going to be fine. I think they just laid some people off. That's my guess. There's like
I read it was like
100 million of those devices,
bleeding money, but
I'm sure they've
it's these moonshot things sometimes where like you take a risk, right, and like it doesn't work.
Take a risk, doesn't work. Celebrate the failure. But Bezos with the Fire phone, he said some analyst confronted him, trying to gotcha on how bad you did on how what a big failure you are on one of his quarterly conference calls. That was such a big failure, and Bezos laughed and he said, "Ha ha! Well, we're going to have much bigger failures than that in the future."
That's a great answer.
Okay, right. But like really, it's, celebrating failures is okay. Now, making it so you have more failures than success is not so good. But it is it's an important part about it. It ties back to my courage comment.
It almost feels like if you're someone who is building, trying to build the next great business, or it's like almost inevitable that these things are going to happen because you're taking big swings, like you said, and it almost feels like the ones who are able to respond to it the best and come out of it the best, or like it's like that's kind of the differentiator between a good leader and a bad leader, perhaps.
Yeah,
like the ones that are remembered and celebrated, and versus the ones that are remembered for.
I mean, I think it's failing. Just you can either handle it and you are a leader, or you can't and you're not.
Yeah,
basically. But I would coach everybody, even on a micro decision basis. This is true. Like, we're taking risks all the time. We're making bets all the time. We're taking swings all the time, and having the courage in your personal lives to decide what's not working and shedding yourself of those bad things. That's really important to just clearing out the cruft and being sane.
Yeah.
So keep things as streamlined as you can and simple as you can, with people you trust and you can count on to deliver, anyway. So that I knew I was going to get torched for that. Now I'm a person at a point in my career that I could handle the flame throwing I got, standing up in public and on CNBC and having to try to explain that everything I'd said for the last, year and a half, I was just doing it about face. And it was pretty brutal, honestly. And leading an organization through change is really hard. Employees were the ones I was worried most about. And they were like, "What do you mean? You just told me this story and this dream and I believed it. And now you're telling me something different." And, I had to patiently explain. It involved layoffs. Like, it was, is a big deal. But, we did it for good reason. Our core business was strong. We reopened our eyes to a much broader market because it turns out this thing is only going to serve a pretty narrow part of the market, and we refocused on the larger market. And then, of course, interest rates have doubled or tripled, and the housing market is, not in a very healthy way right now. And I'm really, really glad that we're not carrying billions of dollars a bag of homes on our balance sheet.
Not to mention having kind of moved your HQ to the cloud and being like fully distributed now. How has it been culturally, like in terms of maintaining kind of keeping the morale high and just like maintaining this excitement throughout the company?
It's been good. I think Cloud HQ is working really well. Yeah, we never fooled around with you got to come back and then don't come back and then come back and then people say, "I don't want to come back." We didn't do any of that. We just went straight to Cloud HQ.
Yeah. We're permanently allowing people to work from anywhere. Actually, no, you got to come back.
Okay, so some companies
they said that, right? It was like permanent, and then it wasn't.
I feel like they had to say that.
Yeah, but I mean, they didn't. But sure,
they thought they had to say that.
I mean, leadership is about being as steady as you possibly can and jerking people around and not letting them plan their lives, certainly at a time when there was great uncertainty. Yeah. Anyway, I'm very glad the way we played that. I believe we're way more productive, way more diverse. We're definitionally more diverse. People are everywhere now. And the diversity shows up in our diversity numbers too, which is awesome because we build better products when we're more diverse and our customers are really diverse. And so I'm pretty excited what it is doing to the company. The people who consider what we're doing as remote work, I have issue with. I don't like the word remote. It's more flexible. People can decide where they live and how they live. But in Cloud HQ, we also get together, and you got to get together. And it's when you get together that you can do a lot of the soft bonding stuff that is fundamental to a culture. At Zillow, it's worked really well for us. I mean, job applications are way up, because it turns out there are a lot of really talented people who don't want to move from Detroit to Seattle.
Yeah.
Okay, much as we love Seattle, and you can't why would you want to live in Detroit? Like, I know my family lives in Detroit.
Yeah.
And I love Detroit, and that's where I want to live. And so now we can actually hire people in Detroit. And guess what? They're awesome.
Right. Aside from like just the real estate market, as someone who has been an investor, I'm not sure if you're still kind of actively investing, but what are you kind of most excited of seeing happen in the next, I don't know, call it 5 to 10 years in terms of perhaps new technologies coming to fruition or just like industries being disrupted? Is there anything that you're like really, really excited about?
Yeah, I mean, when I came back to be full-time CEO, I dropped a lot of the other things that I did, including venture capital stuff, though I still am on a couple boards, outside boards. And I do have general curiosity. I think the ecotech stuff is getting pretty interesting. There was a discovery announced this morning. I don't know if you guys saw it or this afternoon.
Are you talking about like
Q greater than 1? It's fission. Nuclear fission is a very dirty process.
Yeah.
Nuclear fusion is a clean process.
That's right.
That's right.
That's mashing atoms together and getting energy.
Which we desperately need something there.
Well, there's been this like kind of perpetual motion machine fantasy by engineers for quite some time that if we can get the fission thing right, we can produce infinite energy. We can get more energy out of the system than we put into it.
Right.
That happened. That just happened. Now, not in any scalable way, but
it will get there. Yeah.
But it's the start of something.
We will get there. And so...
Weren't we talking about this like a couple nights ago?
Were,
fascinating.
2 nights ago.
Yeah, like energy being the next
power
big
and energy
thing.
Yeah.
Like it has to be.
This is it.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, the whole globe is going to be re-platformed on electricity.
Yeah.
Okay. And ultimately, probably not when I'm alive, but you guys may see a lot of it, like energy, the history of the price of energy per unit is a curve that has been dropping dramatically and is asymptotically approaching zero.
Yep.
Okay. It will basically be cost zero energy. And it's hard to wrap your mind around what that means from a product innovation perspective. So anyway, I think that is a pretty fascinating. That's just one of the ecotech things that is interesting. There's a pretty outspoken guy who's really fun to follow on Twitter, who's a good friend of mine, who runs one of the biggest kind of climate tech funds, named Chris Sacca.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know Chris Sacca?
Yeah, we've actually talked to Chris about being on the show, so hopefully soon.
He used to live here. He doesn't live here anymore, but he did used to.
We'll get him on virtually or something.
Yeah.
He'd be unbelievable.
Yeah.
But
he's doing lower carbon capital.
Lower carbon capital.
Yeah,
He's
from
fun,
lowercase to lower carbon.
He's a super fun guy to follow on Twitter too.
Yeah,
he's
great.
quite outspoken and smart. If you can get a hold of one of his LP letters, do that.
Yes.
So anyway, that is a really interesting area to me. I think broadly speaking, health tech is got to be one of the great frontiers for the next couple decades. It's been trying to get there for the last couple decades. I think the next couple decades
regulation,
is gonna break
baby.
through.
That's what kills it.
Yeah.
Education as well. I mean,
It's really interesting things are happening.
Yeah.
As for Zillow, Rich, I mean,
Yeah.
you're clear, there's your second stint as CEO now. Is succession planning going to be a part of kind of this stint or?
Always.
Yeah.
Always be succession planning out there. Always. It's nerve-wracking succession planning.
Yeah.
Okay? Here's what the week manager does. When the week manager's boss says, who on your team would take your place? The week manager hears, oh my God, they're trying to get rid of me.
Right.
I better make myself indispensable.
Right.
And answer is, no one. I don't have that replacement person. But what the good manager was asking you was, if I wanted to give you a bigger job, is there somebody on your team who you've groomed to take your place? That's what they're asking. That's opportunity. And so there is tension in cultivating leaders underneath you, but it is the most important thing you can do if you want to grow your own leverage as a leader.
Yeah.
Like full stop. And so I always have done that. I always believe that constantly cultivating a great bench of people to take my job is the very best thing I can do. As the CEO. And if I'm doing my job as the leader correctly, I'm not doing much.
Right. Yeah.
Because the team is working, they're communicating, I got the right people in the seat, and I am replaceable.
Yeah. Well, Rich, this has been fantastic. I mean, we can't, thank you enough for just joining us and just being so openly candid with your story and all the kind of wisdom you've accumulated over the years. And I think, speak for both of us when I say we can't, wait to see what comes next for you and Zillow, and appreciate it.
It was a lot of fun, guys.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you.